UFC 310, we are a week and a half away from what I believe to be the most underrated card of the year. This is an unbelievably stacked card. It's just that the placement of the fights are a little bit out of whack, and I understand the criticism. We'll get into that in a minute, but I'm here to give my breakdown and predictions for every single fight on this card. A UFC debutant, Kai Asakura, is going right to the top to fight Alexandre Pantoja. That'll be a really rough one, but there are just so many legends on this card. We have Themba Gorimbo, Anthony Smith. We have Dominick Reyes, former champion Aljo, and Movsar Evloev, but Movsar's not that much of a legend yet. But either way, a bunch of legends, but they're all on the prelims. Unfortunately, Nick Diaz fell off. Nate Landwehr and Dooho Choi, they're on the main card. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Same thing with Kron Gracie. I know he's got the Gracie last name, but the guy's had 3 fights in the UFC and he's lost the last 2 of them. What is going on? Either way, it's an unbelievable card. Stacked, top to bottom, hardcore, fan-friendly fights, memeable legends, and also just regular legends. So I'm going to give my predictions and breakdown for all of these fights. And I just wanted to mention Black Friday is coming up. Same with Cyber Monday, and if you guys are interested, you guys know that I love fitness, I love nutrition, and I have a fitness website with lifting programs for beginners, for advanced lifters, and an entire cookbook with whole and unprocessed ingredients and hearty meals. You know, I've got some hearty meals in the cookbook, all right? And they're pretty healthy. Very healthy. You don't need to eat meager broiled chicken and broccoli these days in order to get in shape and to be healthy. You can eat a big hearty meal with some oomph behind it, but just make sure it's from that Real Food Cookbook. And, you know, we got some deals. Everything is 30% off. And with code MMA, you get another 30% off. So that's basically 30% off already. I've already built it in, and now 30% with code MMA. Huge discounts if you guys are interested. But let's get into this. The first fight on this card, there is a replacement. Talison Teixeira is not the guy that is going to be fighting. Instead, Lukas Brzeski, not so lucky with the UFC debut, and he's actually going to be fighting lighter man skill, Kennedy Nzechukwu. And Lukas Brzeski, I know he looks like he's, you know, a basketball player from Europe, and he's got the build and all that, and you think this guy's about to drop 30, but unfortunately, Lukas Brzeski went to a decision with Walter Walker, who may have the speed of a sloth. And you go into a decision with Walter Walker. Fair enough, I actually think he won that fight. I actually picked him to win that fight, but there's a big difference between Walter Walker and Kennedy Nzechukwu, who legitimately looked like Ciryl Gane against Chris Barnett. And you may say, well, it's against Chris Barnett, and he TKO'd him in the first round easily, but it's like, well, who's Gane fighting, though? Who's Gane looked amazing against, though? Right? Maybe not people that are as bad as Chris Barnett, but still against blobs. And, you know, he's not up against a blob this time, but he's up against a guy that's not really all that great, that has the heavyweight speed, which is not the best thing. I think Kennedy Nzechukwu is the surefire pick right here. He's going to run through Lukas Brzeski. I think he's going to chop him up, chop him down, teeps to the midsection, leg kicks. He's going to be lighting him up with combinations, and Lukas Brzeski has just never seen any speed like this. It was a good move for Kennedy to go up to heavyweight. Even though they may punch a little bit harder, they're much, much slower. I think Kennedy is going to be a future top 10 fighter in this division, maybe even top 5. So I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu with a first-round KO. I think it's going to be pretty quick. I think he's going to put Lukas Brzeski up against the cage. I think he's going to catch him with a good straight right hand or something like that early. And Lukas Brzeski is going to cover up. He's going to catch like a 10, 12-piece combination up against the fence. He'll go down. That'll be all she wrote. Kennedy Nzechukwu, first round KO. Let's get on to the next one. Crafty Vet versus Oliveira 3.0. Chase Hooper. Now, Clay Guida, I believe he's teamed up with Jim Miller to sort of assemble the ultimate craftsman in the gym. And Clay Guida is going to come out here with all the little tools from his tool bag, of course. And Chase Hooper, you know, we used to talk about Chase Hooper as being someone that's just not durable. He can't take a punch. He moved up to 55. Lighter man skill, started beating people's ass, landed a strike record in a 3-rounder, which was very impressive. Obviously not against a guy as crafty as Clay Guida, but since then he has dominated Vyacheslav Borshev. He has submitted, I forget his name. Why am I forgetting the guy's name? He submitted Jordan Levitt, which was a good win, right? A good grappler. And Clay Guida, he's got decent grappling, he's got decent wrestling, but he's been submitted a couple times. I am going to go with Chase Hooper to win this fight. I think he's going to be able to submit Clay Guida or TKO him on the ground. Chase Hooper's ground game continues to improve. He's always been good with his submissions, but his ground and pound, we saw it in his last fight. It was nasty. It was terrifying. Clay Guida, still the same old guy doing the same old tricks. Now, he is crafty these days. I think that we know that Clay Guida's got a hard noggin. He's one of those older vets that can still take a punch. And what his strength is really just the cardio. It's really just that stubborn mentality, the cardio, and he just goes after people with the same old game plan every single time. And that can give people issues. You saw Joaquin Silva fighting this guy. And Joaquin Silva's this big guy, hits real hard, right? You expect him to go out there and flatline Clay Guida, and Clay Guida just head first, right, biting down on the mouthpiece. No power on his punches. He's not throwing peppermint punches, but he's got no real sting on them. And he's just moving forward and just throwing punches and throwing kicks. It's Clay Guida's always fighting like he's hitting pads. And he doesn't care if you put him out. He doesn't care, which rarely ever happens. He doesn't care if you really hurt him. He's just going to go out there and fight. And I think that the kind of opponent that he's going to beat are like the NPC type of opponents or the guys making their UFC debuts with the octagon jitters. But I think Chase Hooper, he's had enough fights in his UFC career. He's faced adversity, and he's becoming more and more confident with all these finishes he's getting. I think he's going to be just fine in there. Yeah, I think he's going to finish Clay Guida. I'm going to go with Chase Hooper by submission or ground and pound TKO. Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin, two of the most boring fighters in the UFC. Max Griffin, one of those guys, throws 5 punches around, a kick every now and then. It just seems like he's only programmed to throw 7-8 strikes max per round, right? No pun intended, Max Griffin. But Michael Chiesa, on the other hand, coming off of a first-round submission over Tony Ferguson, I almost forgot that even happened because of how easy it was and how we all just kind of assumed that was going to happen. So we really weren't surprised in any way, shape, or form. That was one of those, it happens on paper, so it's definitely going to happen in reality type of performances, and it actually did. So it's a much tougher fight this time because this is not Tony Ferguson. Max Griffin is strong. He's in shape. He's not just a shriveled up, older vet that's just lost his last 8 fights by getting dominated and he's got nothing left in the tank. Max Griffin is at least durable, I guess, but is he dangerous? Is this a dangerous man that Michael Chiesa is up against? Is this a guy, despite the fact that Michael Chiesa cannot strike very well, is this a guy that's really going to recognize that and just move forward and try to finish Michael Chiesa as he should? Or is it a guy that's going to be overly patient, that's going to chop at the leg, it's going to throw a couple of jabs around, and is just going to win by decision if this stays on the feet? I think that's what's going to happen. So who do I think has a better chance to finish the other? I think it's going to be Chiesa. I think he has a better chance to finish Max Griffin if he takes this fight to the ground. Whereas Max Griffin, if this is standing, Max Griffin's the kind of guy to just allow this thing to go to the judges' scorecards and just barely do enough, right? So I just think Michael Chiesa, he's got a little bit more of an ability to impose his will. I'm going to pick him to win this fight. I know that may seem silly in hindsight when or if Max Griffin beats him, but you can always say that about a Michael Chiesa fight, right? You can kind of always say that, but Max Griffin, is he really someone that has shown us like really impressive performances on the feet to where I can just guarantee he's going to go out there and knock out Michael Chiesa? No. He's done the opposite. Just a bunch of pitter-pat decisions. He will win this if it's on the feet, but Chiesa, he's going to be a strong guy in that cage, right? He's one of the stronger welterweights, even though he's not the best wrestler. I say he gets at least a couple of takedowns and wins a couple of rounds. I'll go with Chiesa via grappling. Let's get on to the next one. This is a really exciting one. Joshua Van won his last fight, right? Before that, got stopped for the first time, so he's coming off of a win, but I think he's going to win again. I'm a little bit worried just because Cody Durden, he's got real good wrestling and he's got a lot more experience, but at least Joshua Van has good takedown defense and he's basically proven it every single time. That's something that I've always talked about since his first couple of UFC fights. Great takedown defense. And he is statistically the best volume striker in the UFC when it comes to strikes landed per minute. Joshua Van has the most strikes landed per minute in the UFC, 5 fights minimum to even, be considered to be a part of that. And I think he's just going to go in there and do what he does best, just beat up Cody Durden, stuff a bunch of takedowns, outstrike Cody Durden. Maybe Cody Durden hits a little bit harder. Maybe he cracks Joshua Van, and that's kind of a bit of an issue. Joshua Van can get dropped. He's been dropped multiple times. He's been finished. He doesn't have a lot of power in his hands, right? That's unfortunate for someone with as good a striking as he has. He does not have crazy finishing ability. So it's like you're always just going to consider a decision for him. But I don't think he gets KO'd, and I don't think he gets held down. Because of that, he's just going to go out there and outstrike Cody Durden, right? Unless he gets dropped multiple times, which I don't see happening because Cody Durden's not the most dangerous striker. Joshua Van should probably outstrike him, beat him up, and we'll see a really good barn burner fight because this is going to be classic flyweight skill. So let's get on to the next one. Chris Weidman and Eryk Anders. Don't know why they aren't showing up, but either way, catchweight. That's interesting. I didn't know it was catchweight. I forget who I picked initially. I know that I was flip-flopping back and forth, but I think I'm going to go with Eryk Anders, okay? And I think I'm going to pick Eryk Anders to win this via KO. Eryk Anders had a very gritty battle with Marc-Andre Barrieux. And what that proves to me, if you're willing to stand in the middle of the octagon and butt heads with Marc-Andre Barrieux, even though he's not the most dangerous fighter, that shows that you've still got some grit. And I'm not saying Weidman ain't got grit, but I'm just saying I don't know if his body, his durability is still all that there. I don't know if it's still the same Chris Weidman. I mean, remember, this is a guy that got KO'd with a forearm punch. He had the unfortunate leg injury, right? He's not looked great in his last couple performances, and he's coming off of an eye poke TKO win. And we've not really seen this guy dominate with the wrestling recently. Yeah, Chris Weidman can go out there and take down Eryk Anders and sort of hold him down, but does Chris Weidman do what he's supposed to do in all these matchups? Or does Chris Weidman go out there and slug? Does Chris Weidman go out there and have battles on the feet? He usually has battles on the feet. If Chris Weidman just wrestled a little bit more often, I would definitely pick him. But because he goes out there and strikes most of the time, I think Eryk Anders is going to be more durable. He's going to have more gas in the tank. And I think he's going to have a chance at knocking out Chris Weidman because Eryk Anders does hit hard. So I'm going to go with Eryk Anders to win this fight by a KO. I think he's going to get this one done by KO. So let's get on to the next one. This is a sick fight. This is what I'm talking about when I say that this card is stacked. All of these fights are entertaining. It's a hardcore fans card because, again, Randy Brown-Bryan battle, not big names, but very relevant right now and entertaining. Randy Brown coming off of a really insanely impressive KO against Salikov. We talked about Salikov last week. He's still one of these guys, one of these older crafty vets that can knock you out, put your lights out. And I did pick Randy Brown to win that, but I thought he would just win based on a little bit of extra volume. He knocked him out with a really beautiful 1-2 straight down the pipe. And it looks like if Randy Brown just does that every single time, he can beat anyone on the feet. But this is Max Holloway at welterweight. This is the welterweight Max Holloway with the grittiness, with the mentality of being willing to stand in the fire, in the pocket, and box and trade. And we saw that in his last fight against Kevin Doucette, who is a experienced kickboxer from City Kickboxing. Kevin Doucette may not hit that hard, but you know what? Randy Brown's not really known for hitting that hard either. Right? We saw him KO Salikov, but Salikov's one of those older vets, right? One of those older guys. And sometimes you catch them with a good combination and then they go out. But is Bryan Battle one of these older guys that's just going to go out with a good combo, or are you going to have some next level power? You're going to have some JDM level power to put him out. At least that's what I think. So I don't think Randy Brown's finishing Bryan Battle. And then it comes down to, in a tit-for-tat battle, who's winning? Well, Randy Brown will be able to kick on the outside, but that's one thing that Bryan Battle does well, too. He may not be as fast with his kicks. He's still kind of got that middleweight speed, that middleweight ploddiness to him a little bit. But when he gets into that boxing range, And he will. This is the thing. He will be able to get into it because he's not afraid to take damage. He's not afraid to go through the fire. A lot of people, they're getting stomped on the knee, they're getting kicked in the leg, they're getting kicked in the face by Randy Brown, and it makes them hesitant to close the distance because he has that range advantage. The reach this time is pretty similar. Randy Brown's only got a 1-inch reach advantage over Bryan Battle. I say it's for sure that Bryan Battle at least gets into that boxing range a couple of times, and I think he's going to KO Randy Brown. I think he's going to put him out. I think there's going to be a difference in willingness to bite down on the mouthpiece and slug. And it's not like Bryan Battle is just slugging with big meaty hooks, but he's going to go out there and he's going to land 3, 4, 5-piece combinations in the pocket. And he's going to be getting hit and he's going to be smiling at Randy Brown. And I think Randy Brown is not necessarily one of these super gritty gritsters that is just willing to fucking trade in the fire, right? Randy Brown's one of those guys like to clean fight. Bryan Battle has shown me that he doesn't care if it's a clean fight. He's going to go out there and impose his will to the max. And I have to pick him in this one. I just think he's more dangerous. I think both of these guys are going to have success, but I think Bryan Battle is more dangerous. I think his boxing is really next level. Maybe not next level, but it's very good. And we've seen Randy Brown get put away. We've seen him get KO'd multiple times, right? Saw him get put away by JDM with one punch. JDM submitted him, but he dropped him pretty easily with one punch. And we've seen him get put away by Vicente Luque. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Bryan Battle. I just think he's a little bit more dangerous. He's going to impose his will. I can always count on that. And he's going to do what's necessary to win this fight. Whereas a lot of guys, they would get shut down by Randy Brown, even if they've had a bunch of good performances, just because, again, they're not 100% always willing to take the damage to win. Bryan Battle's going to go right through him, I think. So let's get on to Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. Lighter man skill versus Movsar Evloev, who apparently used to be a 35er, but that was a long time ago. So Movsar Evloev's fully morphed into a featherweight. He is one of the strongest featherweights. He's got great wrestling, and he's one of those wrestlers that really utilizes the upper body. Whereas Aljamain Sterling is one of the classic wrestlers and grapplers. Aljo looked real good against Calvin Kattar, and I picked Kattar to beat him, but I've rewatched that fight. And listen, Aljo won and he started to dominate as the fight went on, but Calvin Kattar looked atrocious. Like, he kind of just looked like a sitting duck. He was really not doing anything to impose his will. And, it's one thing Aljo goes out there and dominates Calvin Kattar, who still looks decent, who still is moving around well on the feet. It's another thing that he goes out there and in the first round, he lands a couple of takedowns. Nothing really happened. He wasn't able to beat him up on the ground. He wasn't able to really get Calvin Kattar in any horrible positions. And that was my critique of that performance. It's like Calvin Kattar really didn't have anything for him, but we didn't see Aljamain Sterling really hurt him in that fight with ground and pound or put up a lot of submission attempts or anything like that. It was just kind of takedowns and disrupting Calvin Kattar's one jab every couple of minutes on the feet. Movsar Evloev is going to put up a much, much better fight. Now, Aljo's adjusting to this weight class, so I think he's going to get better as time goes on, but he's also getting a little bit older. I think Aljo might be like 35, 36 at this point. Evloev is going to be fast. He's going to be in the peak of his prime, and I think he's going to have a slight strength advantage, and you just got to think he's going to have a power advantage as well. I know Aljo is good at putting points on the board. There were moments where he was outstriking Jan in their first fight, and he outstruck him in the first round of their second fight, and this is the guy that outpointed Henry Cejudo, who, although took a long layoff, still looked pretty decent in that fight, right? Aljamain Sterling knows how to win. Former champion, lighter man skill. I'm tempted to pick him to win this fight, but I just think that Movsar is going to be more powerful. I think he's going to not allow Aljamain Sterling to take him down multiple times, and I don't see Aljamain Sterling taking his back. And I just think in a battle on the feet, I really do think that people underrate Movsar and his ability to hurt people. Everyone says this guy's got pillow hands. Everyone says this guy's boring. He beat the shit out of Diego Lopez in their fight on the ground relatively early in that fight. He was pushing back Diego Lopez on the feet, landing great combinations. He hurt Arnold Allen. You want to say, oh, Diego Lopez took that on short notice? This guy, whether or not I believe he won that fight, I don't think he won that fight against Allen. He still rocked him on the feet. And Arnold Allen is faster than Aljo. He hits harder than Aljo. He's trickier to deal with on the feet than Aljo. I didn't really see anything that great on the feet from Aljo in the last fight. Yeah, he was elbowing Calvin Kattar with some spinning back elbows, and yeah, he was throwing some combinations, and he can still do well in a points battle. He can still hold his own, but I just don't think he's dangerous at all. And I think that even though people look at Movsar as a bit of a pillow puncher, I can't be the only one to see he's got some thud on those punches. He's got some thud. Okay? You can't be rocking Arnold Allen if you have no thud. It's not like Arnold Allen has no chin. He rarely gets hurt in his fights. Movsar Evloev fucking rocked him and had him doing the stanky leg. He had him doing the Irish jig. I'm picking Movsar to win this fight via decision by out-damaging Aljamain Sterling. I think people are going to say this is a boring fight. You know, it's on the prelims. People can say, thank goodness it was on the prelims. They'll be angry that Movsar won. Dana White is going to critique it, even though, again, he did the same thing when Movsar fought last time. But I actually thought Movsar and Allen was a really entertaining fight. There was lots of action in that fight. Good striking exchanges, good grappling exchanges. Movsar didn't even hold Allen down. So what did we see in the grappling exchanges? Just really slick takedowns. But I think this is going to be a fight that people say is boring, but there's not going to be a lot of stalling in the grappling, and it's just going to be mostly a stand-up battle with two guys that aren't finishing each other. And because people have this idea of Aljo as a pillow puncher and Evloev as a pillow puncher, if it goes to decision, they're just going to complain no matter what. Even if we see a bunch of good exchanges, even if we see a high-output striking battle, they'll just complain no matter what. But I think this is going to be a good fight. Okay? But again, Evloev is a better boxer. He has more power than Aljamain Sterling. Yes, you can talk about the lighter man skill. Fair enough. I understand that. But Movsar Evloev, he is a top 5, in my opinion, featherweight in the world. Like, he's elite at featherweight. If this was against the number 8, 9 ranked guy, of course, after what Aljamain Sterling did last time, I'd definitely pick him to win. But he didn't wow me in his last fight. And people are going to say, well, when has Movsar wowed you? Well, either way, Aljamain Sterling, you look at Calvin Kattar in that fight, Calvin Kattar really had nothing. And it's not like Aljamain did that to him. He just genuinely did nothing offensively. And even though Calvin Kattar had brick wall takedown defense, in my opinion, going into that fight, he's still not Movsar Evloev with his takedown defense and his wrestling. So I think this is going to be an Evloev win on the feet. I think he's going to outdamage Aljamain Sterling. And I think it's going to be an entertaining fight. But I just don't see Aljo taking his back. I don't see Aljo beating him up on the ground. And I don't see the same Aljo that fought Pedro Munoz. I don't see the same Aljo that fought Petr Yan in the first fight, even though he was losing that fight as it went on. What I mean by that is he used to be a lot faster, in my opinion. I see a more heavy, weighed down Aljo, right? And usually when guys move up, they have that speed advantage. And he's still going to have that lighter man speed, that lighter man skill, but he's not super fast anymore. So I'm going to go with Evloev by decision. Vicente Luque, he's fighting Themba Gorimbo. All right, no longer Nick Diaz. I'm happy that Nick Diaz is not fighting Luque because that would have been a really bad matchup for him. He would have easily gotten TKO'd, but now we have Themba Gorimbo. And this is an interesting matchup because, of course, Themba has now finessed a ranked opponent in Vicente Luque, who's a perfect opponent for him because I think Vicente Luque, even though you hear that name and I say, well, he's not, I've said, who was I talking about? Bo. I've been saying things like Bo is sparring with these Penn State wrestling guys that have thrown a couple of punches every now and then, but he's not sparring like killers on the feet, so he still feels uncomfortable on the ground. And I bring up Luque as an example of who you want a guy like Bo Nickel to be sparring, right? Someone that knows Muay Thai, someone that's very experienced, that's dangerous. And even though Vicente is still thought of as like this dangerous killer, and he's capable of hurting people, his durability, which was a huge part of his game, has basically left. I mean, his durability just isn't there anymore. Vicente Luque quit against Joaquin Buckley. He had a horrible TKO against Jeff Neal. That was a brutal one, and he was out for years. He had a brain issue, a brain hemorrhage, I believe, which was really scary. And I just don't see the same guy that's willing to take damage. So this is not the same Vicente Luque that went out there and beat Mike Perry. This is not the same Vicente Luque that used to TKO people back in the day. Still capable of hurting people, still dangerous, but a bit of a plotster. He's always been a bit of a plotster, but now he just doesn't have that same toughness, which is a huge part of his game, just the willingness to take damage. That's why I'm picking Bryan Battle to beat Randy Brown. Themba Gorimbo, he puts people out. I mean, Themba has a lot of power. Themba has a lot of speed. But the issue with this, and this is why it's an interesting fight, is Themba took Niko Price to a boring decision. Okay? Themba's fight before that, I believe, was a clinch fest. And although Themba Gorimbo has gone out there and he's had his early finishes where he goes out there and he ambushes people, Themba's been, and again, this is pretty crazy how he's gotten this fight. He's been having these boring performances against the Dodo Bird Niko Price. He's been going to clinch decisions. And I believe, even though Vicente has shown holes in his game when it comes to the grappling, he can get taken down. It's like, by who, though? He's getting taken down by Bilal Muhammad, right? I mean, Michael Chiesa is pretty good on the ground. Vicente Luque, I know this is a few years ago, fair enough, but Vicente Luque submitted him. Vicente Luque is still dangerous on the ground. I just think Themba can't go out there and just ragdoll Vicente Luque. I don't think he's just going to take him down easily. I don't see Themba's wrestling at that level. And then you got to ask yourself, okay, on the feet, if Themba can't take Vicente Luque down, he's going to be faster than Vicente Luque early. If he goes out there and tries to put it on Vicente Luque early and catch him off guard, I think we could see Themba Gorimbo knock out Vicente Luque. But will he take that approach? Because I think that's the best approach. He's going to have a slight reach advantage and he's going to have a speed advantage, and he does hit hard. Will he do that, or will he try to clinch? Will he slow the fight down? Will Vicente Luque pull off some craftiness in this fight? Will Vicente Luque prolong this? Will he be hip to the idea of him getting put out early, and will he say, you know what, let me parry some of these punches. Let me put him in the clinch real quick and just take the wind out of his sails. I think it's more likely that Vicente doesn't get put out so early. So I'm going to pick Vicente Luque to win this fight. I'm going to go with the crafty, grizzled vet. I think Themba's good, but again, boring fight with Niko Price, who is the slowest guy on the roster at this point. I mean, we talk about Vicente being a little bit plotty. Niko Price is 10 times slower. Even though he's not as plotty, he's very slow. And clinch fest before that, listen, I think that if Themba's sort of struggling to take some people down, I think it's going to be really difficult to take Luque down, who, although doesn't have the best takedown defense, he's very experienced. I think Vicente Luque is going to win this fight by decision. I think his striking is going to be better than Themba's as the fight goes on, and I think he's going to hit hard. I think he's going to give him problems in the grappling, and I think he's going to lean on that experience to get this one done. This is where Themba is going to take his first, or not his first loss. He lost in his debut, but he's going to get a loss handed to him in this one, I think. So let's get on to the next one. Dominick Reyes versus Anthony Smith. One guy beat John Jones. The other guy may have been the worst against John Jones. Anthony Smith, who did he fight last time? Roman Dolidze, right? Roman Dolidze looked pretty decent against Smith, and Roman Dolidze is talked about as having the Ophius style at middleweight. Now, I know that there's lighter man skill and all that, and that was a middleweight moving up, and of course, the double threat Anthony Smith talked about. Dominick Reyes is not dangerous on the ground, but Dominick Reyes is still fast for light heavyweight. He hits hard, and he just beat Jacoby, who's good. Jacoby outstruck Khalil Roundtree, right? Jacoby knocked out Kennedy Nzechukwu. I know Anthony Smith may have an okay chin. He is pretty tough, but man, he's slow. And this is not the same guy that even fought Glover. And I know he lost the Glover fight, but I'm only bringing that up because against Glover, Smith won the first 3 rounds fairly easily. He gassed himself out because he was throwing the kitchen sink at him, but he looked good. He looked fast. He was, outlanded Glover very easily. I'd say like the 2020, 2021, 2019 Anthony Smith was the best Anthony Smith, right? Maybe he can catch Dominick Reyes in a submission. That's possible, but Reyes has good takedown defense. He's strong. He's an athlete. Remember, I think Reyes is going to go out there and put out Anthony Smith. He really doesn't have a lot to worry about. Anthony Smith, every now and then, he'll wing a lead overhand. But, when's the last time we saw Anthony Smith put people away? All right, and the people that are putting Reyes away, Jan Blachowicz, Yuri Prohaska, Ryan Spann, it's not even about their skill. It's just like these guys hit hard. Anthony Smith is not known as a knockout artist, right? And he's not big for this division, right? He's just not got a lot of muscle. He's not very explosive. He's very susceptible to low kicks, and people still haven't checked him on that, right? Roman Dolidze, maybe he actually did kick him a few times. Maybe Anthony Smith is improving a little bit with his low kick defense, but Reyes has good kicks. And he's fast. He's explosive. Yeah, he can get KO'd. Yeah, Anthony Smith can pull off some crafty shit. Maybe he can submit him, but I don't see it. I don't see it happening. You have to really slip on a banana peel to get submitted by a guillotine, all right, if you're Dominick Reyes in this fight. So I think Reyes goes out there and knocks out Anthony Smith in the first round, or just outstrikes him for 3. He's got good takedown defense, as I said. I don't see Anthony Smith taking him down. And even when Smith can take people down, he just doesn't. He doesn't engage people in the grappling. So, yeah, Reyes by being faster. All right, let's get on to the next one. But I can't wait for that fight. That's going to be a sick fight. Don't know why this is not showing up, but Nate Landwehr versus Dooho Choi. Dooho Choi coming off of a KO against Bill Aljo, which is a pretty good win. Right, Bill Aljo, I believe he beat. Who's the guy that he beat? He beat the other version of Gene Silva, the guy that fought Jack Shore. Forgetting his name right now. What the heck is this guy's name? I'm not going to remember it. No, I'm going to remember it. Who's the guy that he beat? We're talking about one of Dooho Choi's opponents that he's beat. And fucking hell, this is not even important. Okay, this ain't even important, but I'm just a little bit upset that I'm not getting it. I'm going to get the name. All right? Dark horse of featherweight. Come on! How do I not know this? I know the name. I know Brito! Yeah! It's Joe Anderson Brito. All right. Now we can go on. Now we can move on. All right? Joe Anderson Brito. I had the face. I had the frickin', guy. I knew who it was. Man, it was just taking forever to come up with a name. So, Bill Aljo is pretty tricky. And Dooho Choi knocked him out. Right? But this is Nate Landwehr we're talking about. Right? This is Nate Landwehr coming off of a KO over Jamal Emmers, I believe. And, Nate Landwehr can get hurt. We've seen him get dropped by Emmers. We saw him get dropped by Onama. But he's got that ability to recover. He's got such a good ability to get up when he's dropped and to get right back into the fight. I'm going with Nate Landwehr. All right? He actually had a pretty good performance against Dan Ige. He got outstruck against Ige. Right? Again, we talk about how he has a good ability to recover. Didn't get finished by Ige, which is pretty impressive. But he was winning the 3rd round. And that's what I like about Nate Landwehr. If he doesn't get finished, I'm going to pick him to beat every single person that's at the level of Dooho Choi because his cardio is really good. He has a submission game, which is important as well. And he's just got such a wide variety of attacks. Right? He can go with the oblique kicks, got great front kicks. He's got good boxing. I think Nate Landwehr is going to get this one done. I kind of understand why they are putting this on the main card because they know it's going to be a banger. It's going to be a war, but I don't think it should be on the main. Either way, it will be a fun fight, and Nate Landwehr is always entertaining. So I'm going to go with Nate Landwehr just winning a scrappy fight in this one, and I think he's going to get better as this goes on. This has potential to be one of the best fights of the year, maybe. I could see it. Dooho Choi and Landwehr. I could see people talking about it years from now. Choi versus Landwehr was my favorite. I could see that going down. Let's get on to the next one. Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie. The king is back. Kron Gracie. This is going to be a really good fight. Kron Gracie is someone that got beat even when he was on the ground for the majority of his fight against Charles Jourdain. How could I pick him against Bryce Mitchell? All right. If Charles Jourdain, who is just, a modern day fighter, if he can take you down, if your whole thing is like, submitting people from the guard, I just can't pick you to beat Bryce Mitchell, who has really good control, who's got good ground and pound, who's got great jiu-jitsu. If you're not submitting Jourdain, you're not submitting Bryce Mitchell. And Bryce Mitchell is just a better striker on the feet as well. All right, I know Gracie's tough, and I know Bryce Mitchell doesn't hit that hard. I'm kind of happy to see Mitchell have a fight like this where he's not going to be up against an Emmett type of hitter. So I'll just say Bryce Mitchell wins a decision. I don't see him submitting Kron Gracie either. Obviously, Kron Gracie's got good jiu-jitsu. Bryce Mitchell doesn't have the most finishes on his record, right? He doesn't have a lot of finishing potential, but he's got good control. He's strong. He's fought much better levels of competition, and he is a better striker than Kron Gracie. He's not up against a big knockout artist this time, so he really has nothing to worry about. This is going to be a good grappling match, but I got to go with Bryce Mitchell to win this one. And now we get on to the feature fight of the night, Ciryl Gane, Bone Gamine versus Alexander Volkov. I'm going to go with Gane, okay? I know Volkov is one of the greatest heavyweights to never win a belt, but Ciryl Gane is better than Alexander Volkov. He's just a better version of Volkov. Both guys aren't the heaviest hitters. Maybe Volkov has a little bit more power than him, but Gane is just faster. Volkov, you want to talk about output? You want to talk about combinations? He's getting better. Gane has the best output in this division. Gane has the best footwork in this division. All right? He's got amazing combinations. And we saw the last fight. It was relatively competitive, but Gane was clearly winning that fight, right? He's just got that ability to dart in, land a spinning elbow, dart in, land a combination, then fade out. No one else that Alexander Volkov is beating easily has that ability. I just don't see Alexander Volkov knocking out Gane with one big punch. Volkov doesn't have one-hitter-quitter power, all right? And I picked Pavlovich to beat him. And Volkov showed a really good ability to keep him on the outside, but, Pavlovich just doesn't really have a lot in his arsenal, other than an explosion every now and then where he goes out there slugging. Gane is not a slugger. He's never been a slugger, but he's got a good jab, right? And he's got good stomps to the knee, and he's got a good front kick to the solar plexus, and he can land 200 strikes. He's got great cardio, good clinch game, got the ability to dart in and throw a spinning elbow. I think it's going to be similar to the first fight. It's going to be competitive, but I think Gane is going to beat Alexander Volkov by a decision. I'm going to go with a 29-28. I just think he's a little bit faster, all right? He's got better footwork. Everything Volkov can do, Gane can do better. That's how I see this fight, but I don't see Gane dominating this fight. I think it's going to be competitive. I think it's going to be like the first one, though. Has Gane gotten better? We'll see. Maybe not, but we know Volkov has, so there is a chance that he goes out there and wins this fight, but I just don't see him knocking out Gane. I don't see him finishing him, and I think that this is an output battle, and I think Gane's going to win it. I think Gane has better output, and I think he's a better tactician. So let's get on to the next one, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Garry. This is going to be an amazing fight. It's going to be a war. All right, Garry, even though he got embarrassed by MVP on the feet, could hardly land a thing on him. That's MVP, all right? MVP is trickier than Wonderboy, it seems, right? And he's faster, he's more explosive, and he's really good at just not getting hit at all. Shavkat, on the other hand, is hittable. Shavkat, on the other hand, is somewhat predictable on the feet. You know what he's going to do. He's going to come forward. He's got great Muay Thai, great kickboxing, but there's nothing that's going to really shock you in his game. But he's powerful, he's gritty. Garry is faster. Gary's got a good jab. Gary's got great kicks, got good leg kicks, and his defense has gotten better. Okay, and when it comes to the grappling, it's going to be competitive. Shavkat doesn't have the best wrestling. This is not a guy that goes out there and takes people down as easily as Khamzat. He may be dangerous. He may submit people when he takes them down. He may have a great submission game, but his takedowns aren't amazing. Gary's got a great judo background, which is going to help him stay up on his feet, especially when they're up against the cage and in the clinch. He's been doing a lot of training with Oliveira. He's been doing a lot of training with Damian Maia. We saw him out-grapple MVP pretty well and control him. But the issue that I see for Garry is that, especially in the grappling, I don't see him pressing the action and offensively grappling against Shavkat. And this is why Shavkat is so good. Shavkat is just so good at imposing his will. He's so good at always being the one on the offensive. No one is going to challenge him headfirst in the grappling and try to take him down and submit him. Maybe Khamzat would. But Garry, there's no way he's going to do that, because the way he's viewing this fight most likely is he's too fast for him. Think about how Ian Garry's thinking about it. I'm too fast for him. He's not going to be able to hit me, right? Ian Garry's thinking about the feet. He's thinking about staying on the back foot. He's thinking about moving around on his bike. Shavkat's thinking about getting a hold of him, taking him down, and submitting him and finishing him. Shavkat's thinking about beating him up on the feet. Ian Garry's thinking about evading. And that's not the mentality that's going to win against Shavkat Rakhmonov. You have to meet fire with fire. And Garry has good striking, but he's not that powerful. If he had the power of a JDM, I'd maybe consider picking him in this fight, but he just doesn't. I do think he's tough, though. I think he's underratedly tough. I think that people don't give Garry enough credit for his chin. He's got a good chin. He was able to take a lot of big punches against Jeff Neal and against Michael Venom Page. Shavkat, again, you want to talk about toughness? He's got the toughness. May have the best chin in this division. It's going to be a war of attrition, and Shavkat's just tougher. He just hits harder. He's just stronger. And his gas tank is there. And his technique is there, right? He may not have the best defense, but if his offensive striking, right, even if he gets outlanded a little bit, he's going to be the one doing the damage. And he still has output. He's going to be the one that's looking for submissions, whereas Garry's always going to be on the defensive. Shavkat wins this fight via imposing his will, being tougher and being more dangerous. He'll get it done by TKO. But I can't wait for this fight because I really do think it's going to be a war. I think that Garry's going to impress a lot of people. He's going to show his toughness. You know, the commentators are going to be saying, Garry, man, everyone that ever critiqued this guy, what about now? And Garry's going to be in there, right? But it's like, yeah, but he's going to have his lip busted open and he's going to be stumbling around after getting hit with big shots. And it's going to be one of those, well, you know, he impressed us with his toughness type of things, but he's eventually going to get KO'd. You know, you just can't go 25 with Shavkat. I don't think you can. And I know that people will say Shavkat's overrated. Who's he beat? Neil Magny. Everyone beats Neil Magny. But it's like, yeah, but he submitted Wonderboy Thompson, and that's never been done. And people have taken Wonderboy down. No one's come close to finishing him like that. And, you know, he had a grit battle with Jeff Neal. He met Jeff Neal in the center of that octagon and was willing to take Jeff Neal's best punches for 3 rounds, and he broke him. That's one of the fastest, hardest hitting guys that hit Shavkat with the kitchen sink. You know, look at how easily Jeff Neal put away RDA. Look at how easily Jeff Neal put away Mike Perry, who was known for his toughness, who was known for his durability. When Jeff Neal actually lets his hands go and throws the kitchen sink at people, they go flying across the octagon. Not Shavkat, though. Shavkat just ate everything like it was a tic-tac, kept moving forward, and he broke Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal's pretty tough, too. He's got a good chin. Shavkat was rocking him all over the place. And then just, I mean, imagine if that's going 5, right? That's kind of how I see this going. It's going to be like the Jeff Neal fight, but Ian Garry's got a fraction of the power that Jeff Neal has. So how's he going to put Rakhmonov out if Neal couldn't? It's not going to happen. You know, you got to go with Shavkat. And I know people will say sometimes, well, who's he beat? He's beaten Neil Magny, who's gotten beaten by everybody. And it's like, well, yeah, but he's submitting Wonderboy Thompson, and he's taking the kitchen sink from Jeff Neal, and he's not going down, and he's finishing him on the feet, right? Like, no one else is doing that. So Shavkat is built different. He's going to win this fight because of it. Ian Garry's going to show a good version of himself. The commentators are going to be impressed with him. You know, he's going to get a lot of respect for his grittiness in this fight, but it's not going to be enough. You can't go 25 with Shavkat. So let's get on to the next one. Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. This guy's not beating Pantoja. I mean, are we really going to sit here and say, I know that we were saying the same thing about Usyk and all that. It's like, dude, Usyk had wins in the UFC, though. Usyk had proven himself more than Kai Asakura, right? And Kai Asakura, who's this guy beating? He's beating training partners of TJ Dillashaw, all right? This guy's beating the Juan Archuletas. Whoa, Juan Archuleta. That's like a name you would have heard in 2018. People were, Juan Archuleta's bad man. Juan Archuleta's lost like 4 out of his last 6 fights, okay? And we're talking in Risen, bro. Kai Asakura beat Juan Archuleta, and people were, Juan Archuleta. That guy wouldn't even be top 10 in the UFC. And I know, when it comes to flyweight, these guys, they're all good, all right? Flyweights are all good. They have that ability to go out there and just be competitive with the champ. But, like, is that going to happen every fucking time? Think about Steve Usyk. Steve Usyk has good wrestling. Steve Usyk has good output. He's got good boxing. Kai Asakura, I've watched this guy fighting Juan Archuleta. He doesn't have crazy output. He doesn't have great grappling. He's got power. But it's like, you know, we've seen Pantoja face people with power. We've seen him go out there and face Steve Usyk, who does have some pop. All right, Brandon Moreno, who does have some pop. We've seen him fight Davison Figueiredo. He got dropped in that fight. I don't think Kai Asakura is going to put him out. I just see Kai Asakura just elbowing him and flying kneeing him. No, bro. That's the way to win. Like, if you're picking Kai Asakura, you're literally just picking him based on KO chance. I could just see the stars aligning. That's literally what it is, a star aligning moment. You could just see a star aligning moment where Kai Asakura shocks the world. Pantoja is the best grappler in this division. He's the toughest guy in this division, and that may be the one thing that ends up being his demise is, you know, his style requires him to take a lot of damage, and eventually the chin is going to go, but it's not like Kai Asakura has crazy output. Kai Asakura's patient. First ever UFC fight. Not in Japan, by the way. So it's not like he's going to have an entire stadium just behind him, right? It's not like they're going to be, cheering for him and it's just going to be a hostile environment for Pantoja. Like, that's just not going to happen. It's going to be in Vegas. Pantoja's had multiple title fights, and you're out there against the best grappler in the division, and you cannot get taken down. It's not like Pantoja will finish everybody, but if he takes you down, you're probably going to be on the ground for the rest of the round. Is Kai Asakura going to go out there and TKO him in the 4th and 5th? Is he just going to keep that gas tank up? I don't think so. This is a whole nother level for him. Pantoja also is dangerous on the feet. He hits hard. Right, drop-ended Moreno a few times, willing to take damage. Kai Asakura's out here fighting people that are playing patty cake with him on the feet, and that's the thing. It's like you watch these Ryzen fights, you watch the Bellator fights. It's no wonder when you tune into a Bellator main event, it disappoints. It goes 5 rounds, right? There aren't many marauders that Kai Asakura's fought, all right? Pantoja's a marauder. He doesn't know how to take a back step, and he will go after him. He will eat a flying knee. He will bite down on the mouthpiece. He'll see it coming. That's the thing. He expects it. Yes, Asakura can hit him with the Masvidal 5-second flying knee. I'm not going to pick it to happen. It's not like this guy has a 100% finish rate. He's got 18 KOs in his last 18 fights, all against top 5 fighters. That's not the case. Maybe then I would consider it, but beating Juan Archuleta in 2024 is not as impressive as beating Juan Archuleta in 2019. Yes, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've just studied Asakura's game for 30 hours, but come on. He was signed to the UFC because he's entertaining and he's pretty good. But this is not a phenom necessarily. All right? This is not necessarily a phenom like a Khamzat, a Shavkat. This is a good, solid, entertaining fighter. He's going to win ranked fights. He's not beating Alexander Pantoja. This is not in any way a difficult fight to pick. Okay? I'm going with Pantoja. How's he going to get it done? I'll go with a submission for Pantoja. I'll say a 2nd or 3rd round submission. He'll take some damage, but Asakura's just going to be in there with a whole nother beast. He's never fought someone that grapples like Pantoja. A lot of these guys in Rizin, they're like good strikers. There's a lot of great strikers in Rizin. Same thing with ONE FC. Same thing with Bellator. When it comes to grappling, the UFC is the best grapplers by far in MMA. And you're talking about lighter man skill grappling that Pantoja has. He's getting this one done. I'm going with Pantoja, 2nd round submission.